In this lesson, we continue with our discussion of finance. Now, as indicated here, the finance that we are going to be discussing is going to be in sections. The first section being interest, the second section being banking, and the third section being inflation. Now, we have had some discussions already on this first section, which is interest. We saw how interest is, again divided into sections, being simple interest and also compound interest. We went ahead and had a discussion on how simple interest can be calculated, and we saw that in calculation of simple interest, we looked for the original amount of money invested or the original amount of money given out in the form of a loan in the process of calculation of simple interest. And simple interest for each month is calculated based on the original amount of money, which we also call the principal. Now, on the other side, the compound interest, which is the second, which is another type of interest. Compound interest is calculated on the most recent amount of money, not the original amount of money. For example, if initially 5,000 was invested and the 5,000 was earning interest every month, for example, the first month, the second month, and the third month. Now, notice that if, for example, if, for example, in the first month, the interest earned was 50, then now for the second month, when we are calculating compound interest, in the second month, we calculate the compound interest based on the most recent amount of money we have got, which is now going to be the 5,000, which is the initial investment plus the interest which was earned in the first month. We use that in calculation of what? Of compound interest. We did some few examples on that. I hope remembering it will not disturb you that much. As we continue with our discussion, I would just like to remind you that by the end of this chapter of finance, which is now divided into interest, banking, and inflation, you will be able to understand the differences or the difference between simple and compound interest, which we have been looking at. You will also be able to perform simple and rather calculations on simple and compound interest, okay? Either by using a formula or by the manual method where you don't use a formula. You will also be able to make sense of graphs drawn to represent simple and compound interest. Now, this last bit of using or making sense of the graph is what we would like to look at in this case. And so the question we are discussing, the activity we are carrying on, we are discussing in this lesson is based on the graph which is right before you on the screen. So the graph before you on the screen reads, the graph below shows a comparison of the amount of money in an investment over time if simple interest and compound interest are calculated on the money invested, okay? So this is what we have. This is our graph. On the vertical axis, we have the amount. And the horizontal axis, we have what? The period of time over which the interest is being calculated, or rather, interest is being earned, and it is in months. Now, we have not been given specifically the name of the two graphs. We have this graph in red, and we have this other graph, which is what? Which is in blue, a dotted line. Now, we are comparing the amount of money in an investment over some period of time, and we would like to find out basically which type of interest is going to make more money. Is it going to be simple interest or it's going to be compound interest? And how do we know that it is this type which is represented by this type of graph? You see, we have two graphs, this one as I indicated earlier and this other one. How do we then know that, for example, this one is this type of interest, and this other one is the other type of interest. You see, this is what we have. This is the information we have been given. Now, from the information we have been given, you can see that we are starting from 0 for the time period to 1 month, to 2 months, 3, 4, up to what? Up to 15 months. While on this other side of the what? Of the vertical axis, the amount of money, well, we are also starting from 0 and it is increasing in what? In 1,000. That is 1,000 rand, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, like that. The other thing we notice is that all the two graphs, the dotted one in blue and the red one, they're all starting what? At the same point. What that means is that for all the investment, the amount invested was the same, okay? So it's like there are two people here. The first person is giving out this amount of money, and for him, he is charging his interest using simple interest. And another person is also giving this amount of money, and for him, is charging on another type of interest called compound interest. As you see here, these are different graphs. These are different interest types. Now, here is the question. The first question being, which graph represents the scenario where simple interest has been calculated on the investment, and which graph the scenario where compound interest has been calculated? And we are supposed to do what? We are supposed to explain how we have chosen this one. Now, remember the way we have been having the discussion much previously. When we are calculating simple interest is calculated based on the original amount of money. What this means is if the original amount of money, for example, is this one, 5,000, and let's say the interest rate is, for example, 10%. Well, that means at the end of the first month, the interest is going to be 10% of what? Of 5,000. That is, for all of them, interest is going to be 10%. Now, the second month, interest, if we are dealing with simple interest, then it's going to be 10%. And it's going to be 10% of 5,000. So 10% of 5,000 for the first time is what? Well, 10% of 5,000 for the first time is 50. All right, it's 50. So let me just bring right away here how we are going to be calculating this so that we get into it really, really quick. So we will have to know the 10% of 5,000, which is 50. And you see, roughly here, this is going to be 5,000. Is it 50, 5,500? Well, let's just use a calculator and we get this thing going right away. So for this, I'm going to share a new screen just to help explain this part here, just to help explain this other part. Now, the part that I would like to explain is how simple interest is going to be increasing and how compound interest is going to be increasing. Well, I will start with simple interest. So here we go. I'm sharing now a new screen where we are going to be having our calculation right away. So we are saying we would like to start with what? With simple interest. Interest. Now, when we are calculating simple interest, the thing that we want to look at, well, let me first paste this. Yes. Okay. So when we are calculating simple interest, and let's say it's 10%, so it's going to be 10%. Now, 10% means 10 divided by what? Divided by 100. That is 10 divided by 100 of what? That is times the original amount of money that we have been given. That is times what? Times 5,000. What do we get from here? Well, we now need a calculator for this. So we say 10% of 5,000, which is what? Well, it's 500. Yes, it's 500. So there we go. So now this is the interest for the what? For the first month. So we say this is the first month. First. Like that. Now in the second month, the interest, okay? In the second month, we say second month. In the second month, what we are going to have just doing some small spacing. All right, so in the second month, we are still going to have 10%, okay? Percent, which is 10 divided by 100, okay? 10 divided by 100. 5,000. For that is also 500, you see. So that what we are actually having is that in the first month, interest is 10% of the original amount of money, being what? Being 5,000. Then in the second month, interest is still 10% of the original amount of money. What this means is in the first month, the person who borrowed this money is going to pay 500 as interest. In the second month, the person who borrowed this money is still going to pay 500 as interest. In the third month, the person who borrowed this money is still going to pay 500, you see? So the interest is going to be calculated. In fact, let me extend it over a period of what? For example, over a period of, well, let's say 4 months. So this is now going to be the third month. You see, that is what we have. Then in the fourth month, right here. So this is the fourth month. Then, even in the fifth month, just to explain this really quick, what we are trying to do here is that to calculate the interest. Now, interest is calculated. When we are calculating simple interest is calculated on the original amount of money. And what is the original amount of money in this case? It's 5,000. So you see, 10% of 5,000 is 500 in the first month. 10% of 5,000 is still 500 in the second month. So in the first month, he's paying 500. In the second month, he's paying 500. In the third month, he's paying 500. In the fifth month, he's paying 500. You see, in that order. So every month he's paying 500 as interest. So that means at the end of the month, rather at the end of the day, the total amount, okay, the total amount which is going to be paid. If we talk about a period of 5 months, then the total amount is going to be the original amount of money plus the interest for the first month, plus the interest for the second month, plus the interest for the third month, plus the interest for the fourth month, plus the interest for the what? The fifth month. What you notice is that the interest is increasing by the same amount of money. Well, how about the concept of compound interest? Well, if we calculate all this, we get 750, rather 7,500. Now, how about compound interest? So for interest, the interest for the first month is still calculated. The original amount of money, yes. But now, in the second month, okay, in the second month, let's right here, second month. Second month, interest is going to be 10% of 5,000 plus the interest that we had initially. Okay, so it's going to be 5,000 plus 500. So the interest is going to be calculated based on the original amount of money plus this new interest, which is now added onto the original amount of money. Well, what do we get for that? Let's calculate that. That's going to be 5,000, rather 550. So the interest is going to be 550. Now, in the third month, okay, let's say in the third month, interest is going to be calculated based on the most recent, which is what? Which is going to be 5,000 plus, okay? 5,000 plus the interest, which is what? Which is 550. See that? That is how the interest for the third month is going to be calculated. And what is that going to be? Well, it's going to be a different amount of money this time. Let's see. That's going to be 5,550, rather 550. 55 like that, you see? So for the first time, the interest was 500. The second month interest is 550. Month, wait, I think I need to add something here. So it's going to be, yes, the interest for the first month is 500. The interest for the second month is 550. Then interest for the third month is 555, yes. Then now for the fourth month, okay, for the fourth month, say fourth month, interest is going to be well calculated based on the original amount of money plus the new interest which we have got. And what is the new interest? The new interest is 550. 5 years, 555. What is that going to be? Well, that's going to be, let me calculate. Yes, 5,555.5. Rather 550.5. You see, it keeps on increasing. And it is not increasing by uniform amount of money. You see that? Well, let's see what we have in this case then. So once again, interest in the first month is calculated based on this one here, the original amount of money. Then the original amount of money is then going to be added onto the interest. That will form the principal. Okay? Now, when we add this, the principal is now 5,500. Okay? And from it we add. Now, okay, sorry. There is something here which I missed out. I missed something small here. In the second month, this is correct. But in the third month, we are going to be adding onto the 550. Rather onto the 500 which we had, we are now going to be adding this 550. Yes, that is what we are going to get, so that we calculate the principal from it. So let me now use a calculator right here with me, and I see what we have got from this. The calculator, I'm going to use the calculator I have right here with me. which is going to be, I now have to add 5,000 to 500, then later to 550. Yes, then I will multiply that with what? With 1%. This is 605, yeah. Here we are supposed to have now 605, 605. Then for the third month, the fourth month, we're going to be having 500 interest for the first month plus 550 interest for the second month plus 605 interest for the third month. Let's see what we get here. So what we get here is going to be, well, 5,000 added to 500, then later added to 550, then later added to 605, like that. What do we get here? Well, what do we get in this case? Well, this is going to be 665.5, yes. And then now, in the fifth month, okay, let's write here fifth month. In the fifth month, the interest is going to be calculated, you see, as follows. So we are going to be having this plus interest for the first month, plus the interest for the second month, 550, then interest for the third month, 605, then the interest for the sixth month, which rather fourth month, which is 665.5. So let's see what we get from here. Well, let me just add this right away. We are going to be having 5,000 added to 500, then added to 550, then later added to what? 605, then we add 665.5. Yes, then we calculate the interest as 0.1. This is going to be 732.05. Yes, you see that? Now, the total money, okay? The total money is now going to be equals to what? It's going to be equals to the original amount of money, the interest, which is 32.05. What do we get here? We get 5,700. 5,732 point. Let's check what we got up there and we make the comparison. Yeah, you see, here we got this amount of money, 7,500 over a period of 5 months. And here we got 5,700. You see that? And 32. Here, on the 700 for 5,000. Is it? Is this a correct addition? Let me see. No. I did not add it nicely. I added only the last month. Let me just add for the previous one also. which is what? 665.5. Then we add 605. Then we add 550. Then we add 500. Well, yes. When we add it all like this, then we can now compare. This is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months. Yes. We can now add this for 5 months. So we have 5,000 added to 732.05. Then to it we add 665.5. Then to add 605. Then to it we add 550. And to it we add 500. What do we get there? We get 8,000. Yeah, we get 8,000. 8,052.55. You see, that's the difference. Now, I did this so that it would be easy for you to see how to calculate compound interest and simple interest manually. I have to admit that calculating it manually is a lot more difficult than calculating it when we are substituting in the formula. And now, well, getting back to the question that we had, the question was, which represent the scenario where simple interest has been what? Which graph represents the scenario where simple interest, the scenario where simple interest has been calculated on investment, and which one represents compound interest. And we are supposed to explain. Okay, so now how do we handle this part? Well, we say for the explanation part, we simply say the red graph, that is the curved line, represents compound interest. The money in the account is growing at an increasing or exponential rate, as is always, calculated on an increasing balance. So the balance keeps on increasing, and as the balance keeps on increasing, also the interest keeps on increasing. Now, the straight line represents simple interest. The straight line represents simple interest as the amount of money in the account always increases by the same or fixed amount of interest every month. Well, what's the second question? The second question is then asking that we do what? Is asking that. The second question is asking that according to the graph, how much money was initially invested? Well, according to the graph, the amount of money that was invested was what? 5,000. So that is the amount of money. So we have already seen that this red line represents what? Compound interest. This straight one represents what? Simple interest. Now the next thing here is, according to the graph, how much money was invested initially? Initially, this is the amount of money that was invested. It wasn't a zero. No, it wasn't a zero. It was 5,000. Because we were calculating the interest based on 5,000. What's the next question? For how many months is the money being left in the what? In the investment. So we see where the graph is ending. So where is the graph starting? The graph is starting here, and it's ending for all of them. It's ending with this. And so what is that time period? The time period is 15 months. 15. Okay? Months is the amount of time over which the investment is placed. The next question is, use the information on the graph. Use the information on the graph of simple interest scenario to calculate the amount of interest added onto the investment every month if simple interest is calculated. So we are supposed to find out the amount which is added every month. Well, you can just see this for yourself, looking at the straight line. You see, when you look at the straight line, we have this in the middle. This is 500, then here. Also, plus another 500 is 6,000, plus another 500, 6,500, then plus another 500, 7,000, then plus another 500, 7,500, then plus another 500, 8,000, you see, which is exactly also what we have been calculating. If you remember how we were calculating simple interest based on what? On the 10%. So it's 500 based on the what? On the graph. Or you could say you could look at this, which is 11,000. So it will be like from 5,000, we have got 11,000, which is what? Which is 6,000, an increase from 5,000 by 6,000, giving us 11,000. So we would divide this 11,000 by what? Rather, we would divide the 6,000, which is an increase on 5,000 to get 11,000. So we will divide the 6,000 by 12, and that gives us 5,000, rather 500. Then now in the second case, the rate at which the interest is being calculated on the investment. Now to calculate the rate, okay, to calculate the rate really quick, let's go to a new share right away here. So to calculate the new rate, I've already seen, we're just looking at the rate. So to calculate the rate, what are we going to do? Well, we say 500 is equals to something out of 100, okay? And that is what we now want to know. Something, we don't know that out of 100. Of what? Of 5,000. That is how we calculate the what? The rate. Rather of 5,000. What this means is 500 is what we have been getting as our interest. The 500 is some percent of the original amount of money, and that is what we want to call X. You see that? So we then need to find the value of X. How do you find the value of X? Well, to find the value of X, we first simplify this. When we cancel this by that, we get 50. So we simply now be having 500 equals to 50 of X on the right hand side. So what we then do here is, let's divide this then by 50, okay? In the next step, rather, let's just put 500 equals to 50 of X. So we now divide right hand side by 50. Then we also divide left hand side by 50. So what we get is going to be, which is going to be the value of what? The value of X. But remember, it is what? It is 10% because it is rate. So we say 10%. That is how we calculate the rate. So once again, to calculate the rate, since we already know the interest. By the way, how did we calculate the interest? We were supposed to use the graph. Well, we could say from the graph, if we are supposed to calculate the interest from the graph, we were given 11,000. So we would be like 11,000 minus 5,000, 6,000. We divide this one, which is the additional amount of money. We divide it by what? We divide it by 500. We say 500 equals to this. So X is supposed to be in percent. And so when we simplify this, we can cancel this with that. We get 50. Then we now have 500 equals to 50 of X. From here, we can then divide by 50 and here by 50, and we get 10%. That is how we would calculate what? The rate. Well, what was the next question? quick. We're done with the rate, which is 4.2. The next question is use answers in 2, 3, and 4.2, and the formula below to calculate. All right, so we are starting with the 2. What is 2 saying? How much was originally invested? That is, we got that 3. For how many months? Yes, we got that. Then 4.2, the rate. We are supposed to calculate the compound interest. All right. So to calculate the compound interest, let's go to a new screen right away. So to calculate the compound interest, we say compound just supposed to calculate the interest. They give us the formula. So we say the formula is A equals to P times what? P times, let's see the formula again. 1 plus I, all right. 1 plus I, like that, raised to N. Do we calculate this? And what is the amount of money? Well, we say the amount is now equals to the principal being 5,000. Then we put there what? Where we'll be having 1 plus the interest rate, which is what? 10%. Okay? 10% is the same as 10 out of 100. Then what do we have outside here? Well, what we have outside is the number of period of time, the period of time over which the interest is going to be calculated. So we just enter this right away in a calculator. Just to avoid wasting time, let's enter this right away in a calculator and we see what we get. So in a calculator, we are going to be having right here, going to be having 5,000 times, we open the bracket, then we have 1 plus 10%, then we raise it to 15. Yeah, that is going to give us 20,000 and what? And 886.5. Yes. No, 0.2. Yes, 0.24. That is what we get. That is what we get when we do what? When we use the formula. And what's the next question? The next question is asking for that based on what you can see in the graph. What do you think? Why do you think very few banks or financial institutions make use of simple interest? Well, why do banks don't use simple interest? Well, simple interest guarantees a much higher return on an investment. This means, well, once again, let me read the question based on what you can see in the graph. Why do you think very few banks or financial institutions make use of simple interest? Like, why is it that very few banks make use of simple interest? Well, one thing we know is that simple interest guarantees a much higher return on an investment. This means that when banks charge compound interest on loan, they make much more than if they were to charge simple interest. You see? So yes, financial institutions, they're like any other businesses. What they're after is what? What they're after is making as much money as possible. Simple interest cannot give them that much money. It is compound interest which makes more money. You see that? So because of that, simple interest is not used by many banks. And that is going to conclude our discussion of today. So I guess you can now get ready for an activity to do. And from the activity, well, That's when we can get ready for the next thing. I think our next lesson is going to be on banking. Since we are now getting done with the interest, please make sure you follow this carefully up to the end. Then afterwards, you do